Hey, how's it going?
What's up, guys? We're gonna wait till some people load in here. But thanks for joining us if you're here yet. We're gonna wait for people to pour in. We wanted to introduce ourselves a little bit if you don't know anything about us. We're Little Bear Coffee. We're stationed in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We've been open in operation for about 2.5 years now. We are a specialty roaster. We have two locations. I manage our uptown location. My name is Isaiah, and
I'm Josh. I am at the location we're at right now, which is in Nob Hill, Albuquerque. It's our second one. We just opened in November.
yeah, and I mean, a big part of like Little Bear's vision that we're glad to share with you guys is like how we're able to educate people. So we're gonna be doing some tutorials today. We're gonna have some, fun. We're gonna do a latte art throwdown. So we got some cool stuff coming up, and we just kind of want to show you what we're all about. We know a lot of y'all are just staying home, have a lot more time on your hands.
Maybe brewing coffee from home as well.
Yeah, so hopefully brewing some coffee. And just to give you some pointers of how we like to do it in the store. There's a lot of different ways to brew coffee, so we try not to be dogmatic about it, but we wanted to give you a little of our insight of kind of how we came to, these specific recipes, why we like them, why they're, a lot of them are pretty user friendly. They could just take a couple trial and error shots, but pretty stoked.
Totally. And we want to say also at any point, if you guys have any questions or anything or comments, please just send them through. We'd love to answer any questions you have, spend time with you guys answering any questions, or if there's anything that's unclear about gear we're using or just something you ran into with brewing at home that you might need a little bit more help, we want to be resources to that. We do, if just want to throw it out there, we are running a sale just for Renegade. So if you guys end up going to our online store, we're doing 20% off, and the code is just Renegade. So type that in if you guys decide you want to get some coffee. We got some new coffees that we are going to be using today that we're super stoked about. So yeah, if you have any questions at any point, please send them through. No stupid questions with an asterisk.
And let us know, like, if you're joining in from like some other state, wherever you are, just let us know where you're kind of joining us from, because it'd be
or
cool.
Or Brazil. There's always someone from Brazil in a live chat.
Yeah, likely. Likely. But yeah, just let us know. Like I said, we're very grassroots. We're stationed in Albuquerque, so it's cool to kind of get a voice for people who might not live in Albuquerque, maybe never been to Albuquerque.
Yeah.
If you're ever passing through, stop by and see us. We'll give you all the good recs, get you hooked up with good coffee. But yeah, it's cool to be able to have this platform to share with everyone who's here.
Definitely.
Just getting going soon. Cool. We got anything?
Somebody called you guys absolute legends. Would you like to comment?
Thank you.
It's actually a myth. It's not been proven.
From the bottom of our hearts.
Fox says to come to Brazil.
Oh, okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Dude, it's not, Cool.
Okay, sweet.
So I'm going to get started with our Aeropress tutorial. So if you own this little guy right here, this tutorial is for you. Even if you don't own one, but you've seen them around or you're interested in how to make them, then this is also for you. So a really cool thing about this guy, so this is what we'd call an immersion method of brewing. So you'll see this method, and then Josh later is going to demonstrate what a pour-over method is. So an immersion method, another really popular one that's out there would be a French press. Shout out to all the French press drinkers out there. We like this guy compared to the French press because even though it makes a smaller cup, it's a lot of like what we'd call cleaner. So the filters we use are paper instead of like a big metal mesh filter that you'd use in like a French press. So it makes the coffee a bit cleaner so you don't have as much body, but also you don't have as much like grit in the coffee. So if you've ever had like coffee, cowboy coffee with grounds at the bottom, you can totally avoid that. But also if you do like that, you can totally do that in an Aeropress as well. We're using paper filters, but they sell metal mesh filters, and metal mesh filters work. They don't filter quite as much as our paper filters would, but especially for the sake of sustainability, it's still a really good choice. You'll notice that there's volumetric notches on the base of the Aeropress. So we got the plunger, the base, and then the basket, and then the filter in the basket. So these measurements are cool and make Aeropress really convenient for going outside. Like if you're camping, you still want to brew coffee, you don't want to use Nescafe, you don't want to use instant coffee, got a little time on your hands. So Aeropress is really good for that. We'll be using a scale just so it can be as precise as possible, but you don't technically need a scale. You can still get pretty consistent results by using these little measurements. And I'll walk you all through both. We'll also have a place to download all of these after. So if you missed part of it or you didn't catch part of it, we'll have it all written out nice and tidy for you. So right off the bat, we're doing an inverted Aeropress method. There's so many different ways, but the two primary ways would be, this would be the standard way. So if you have your carafe or mug or whatever, it would go straight on top. You'd put your coffee in, and then you'd steep it for a set time and plunge. So the steeping part is what makes it an immersion method as opposed to a pour over method. So if you're steeping coffee, so we're going to time it, and you'll see that, and we can break the contact of coffee to water whenever we want. Something like a pour over, you want to grind it to a specific point so the water travels through it at a specific time, but you can't control exactly when that water breaks contact with the coffee like you can with the immersion method. So that's what is cool about it. Really versatile. A little more forgiving than pour over methods, in my opinion. But at any rate, the inverted method goes plunger side down, base side up. You see right here, we got our volumetric measurements. We have the plunger right at the beginning of this 4. So we'll throw it on the scale. We'll tare it. So some of y'all have like buy ground coffee. Some of y'all have coffee that you grind at home. If you do grind coffee at home, or if you're asking a barista to grind your coffee for an Aeropress, at least for this specific recipe, really the word for it, even though it's a little general, is just fine. So generally coffee ground, measurements are a little tricky, but on one end you have coarse, on one end you have fine, and then you'll hear medium coarse, you'll hear medium fine. This would be a finer grind. It's not the finest you could go, nothing close to like espresso or anything like that, but still finer than what we'll do for a V60. So we'll also wet our paper filter. If you're using a paper filter, in this case we are, you kind of want to rinse out those like papery flavors. If you just brew onto like straight dry paper, it will taste like it. So we'll try and avoid that by rinsing it. We'll set our basket kind of to the side here. Want to make sure got our timer ready. Luckily there are timers everywhere in our pockets now, but some scales also have timers. We happen to have a timer as well. At any rate, you want to tear the Aeropress, pour your coffee. So after you grind your coffee, you could lose a bit. So let's say you weigh out 17 grams of whole bean coffee, then grind it. You might find that you lost some in the process, so you can over measure by maybe a gram or so. But the idea is to make sure that this is at 17 or as close to 17 as possible. Sometimes there's a little variability that you can learn to appreciate. So we'll tear it one more time. We got 17 grams in there. We got our kettle going. Hot water. There's stovetop kettles. There is these gooseneck kettles, and then we're using an electric gooseneck kettle. Another good thing I forgot to mention actually is that this gooseneck right here, it's used to control the flow of water a little bit more, but it's really helpful for something like a pour over method. It is still helpful for an Aeropress, but if you don't have one of these fancy gooseneck kettles, you can still make a really good cup of coffee in an Aeropress. You don't need to control it like quite as precisely as you would for a pour over. So just keep that in mind. Another reason that Aeropresses are awesome. So with any really coffee brewing method, whether that's like on your drip, coffee pot, this guy, whatever else, if you have relatively fresh coffee that's roasted, within the last 2 weeks, you'll always need to do a bloom. So what the bloom is, you may have heard it before, is we're gonna wet the grounds. So since we weighed out 17 grams of dry coffee, we're gonna pour about twice that. So in our case, like 35 grams of water, give or take. You could be a little forgiving. We're gonna start our timer for 30 seconds. And then we're gonna give it a gentle stir. This little paddle comes with the Aeropress, so if you have one, hopefully you didn't lose it, but also you could use a spoon. It works just as effectively. So we're gonna wait for about 30 seconds. You could wait anywhere between 30 and 45 seconds, depending how fresh that coffee that you got is roasted. And then at 30 seconds, we're gonna pour to 220. And then I also mentioned that if you don't have a scale, we're actually just gonna pour to the lip right along where this like hexagon starts, if you can see it. But if you have a scale, 220 grams total is what we're going for. Perfect. Cool. And then we're gonna steep it for another 45 seconds. We'll also give it another stir, because even if you don't see it, there's kind of some clumps there, and those clumps could kind of keep out the water, which can interfere with the extraction. So as soon as we give it a little gentle stir, you could press it down a little bit so you don't have as much air. Lock this into place. I've made the mistake of not locking it, and it is messy and frightening, and it hurts. So you could pull this technique and then flip it, or you could just swiftly flip it over. You want to make sure to hold the base when you're plunging, and we're going to do like a slower plunge. So it's going to be like 30 to 45 seconds, which helps us have like a little cleaner cup. If you press it really, really quickly, you could send some of like the fines that you might not necessarily want into your coffee. This recipe is like specifically for a cleaner cup of coffee. So for y'all that really like the Aeropress, and like prefer maybe like a more pour over drip style coffee, then this recipe is gonna be really good for you. If you need to up dose, you always can. So if you want a little stronger, you can measure out, 19 grams, 20 grams. So when we pressed, we heard the gas, so the air, you'll hear kind of a hissing sound. Stop there. Once you hear that hissing sound, that means it's done extracting. Cool part, you just take the basket off. Oop, got some drip. And then you just push the coffee puck out. You can rinse it a little bit. And then you have a really awesome, balanced, clean cup of coffee. This particular coffee is our Costa Rica. So what I like about this, it's a fairly new one. It's got a really subtle, light body. So that's why this recipe is particularly good for that. A coffee like this is probably, best black only because it's a more delicate coffee. So those more floral tea-like flavor notes will be able to come out a lot more without adding any cream. There's a lot of coffees that we do carry that I think go a little better with cream because they have fuller bodies. Another thing to keep in mind is that it is only 8 ounces. So if you kind of want like a big cup, you could always do a concentration recipe, which is like a similar to espresso in that it's very concentrated, but you can dilute it. And that dilution recipe works really well. I've used several of them. So we'll post ours, but you guys should check out all of the different ways you could brew it. But like I said, this specific recipe is going to be for a good 8-ounce clean balanced cup. And that's kind of like really what we're going for. So I'm going to see how we did. Yeah. So if you'll compare like this specific coffee to a V60, you'll get more body out of an Aeropress just because of the filtration. But ideally, you'll still have a really good amount of like what we call flavor clarity. So whenever you see those weird flavor notes on bags and whatnot, when we talk about clarity, what we're talking about is like generally speaking, it doesn't have much bitterness. It's sweeter, and you can identify those flavor notes like really easily or relatively easily. And so that's what we mean if we say clean, or if you hear a barista say clean. The term can get a little bit lost in translation. But in case you were wondering, that's what that means. So let us know if you guys are brewing Aeropress at home or what you guys like to brew with. But I'm going to be signing out, and we're going to do a round 1 latte art throwdown. And we're going to have it between Roaster James and Knob Hill Cafe manager Josh. So we're going to get that going right now. And we're going to have y'all vote. And we're going to see which one's better. And if y'all have any questions at all, just ask them. I'm here. I'm going to be waiting until they get all of their stuff ready. So feel free to let us know. And it doesn't have to be about this specifically. If you have any questions about Little Bear as a whole, what we're about, the history of Little Bear, if you want to know anything at all, if you want to know, let's see, if you want to know what I've been listening to recently, I'm your plug for that.
A lot of people have tried Aeropress.
Great.
There's a couple people say it's their favorite.
Dang. Well, what does everyone like about it? I said all the things I like, but maybe there's a way that... What if you know something that I don't know? If you know something that I don't know about the Aeropress, let me know that too.
It's also slightly delayed.
A little delayed. That's alright. Well,
We have a bunch of people.
what's the first thing? Wait, we got people?
No, I was just saying we have just people saying they really like it at home.
Sick.
Matt says it's his favorite for afternoon coffee.
Afternoon coffee. You know, that's not discussed enough. You gotta switch it up a little bit between AM and PM. And I'm not talking decaf. Don't get it twisted. I'm not talking decaf. I'm saying like Matt. Matt's got the right idea. You do pour over in the AM once you settle down a little bit, but not too late because you don't want to be up all night. Nice little Aeropress. I like that.
Can you remind everybody of how the voting works so they know that they're
Yes.
getting
So
the internet?
our competitors are coming, and I'm gonna tell you guys after they pour. I'm gonna say this pours A, this pours B, and I'm gonna have y'all in the chat put A or B, whichever you think's better. Now keep in mind what we're gonna be grading here is basically creativity, complexity, the contrast of the white foam on the dark foam. We're also testing symmetry and milk texture. So I'm gonna be here to remind you guys once you vote, don't mess it up. Got a beautiful tulip from James. And we got another beautiful tulip from Josh. All right, gang. Here's what we're working with. We got latte A right here. We got latte B right here. Don't get hasty. Think about it for a minute. This guy, you got real good symmetry. You got those beautiful layers right there. This guy, you got more layers, though. So, form-wise, they're both excellent. It's up to y'all to decide which one's better, though. It's not easy, but there is a clear winner.
Which one's A and which one's B?
A, B. A, B. A, B.
2 votes for Stacks
Okay.
on B.
We got two for B. We got
4 for B.
We got 4 for B. Can I get 1 for A? Can I get a 1 for A?
B. B.
Oh, shoot. We got 5.
7 B's.
Oh, my God.
All right. So give them a last chance.
All right. You guys got a few more seconds. If you want to save A, you let me know now.
Oh, Jacob says A also. Kate says B. B is the winner by a landslide.
Woo! Joshy boy takes that round. Okay. Ooh, things are getting spicy. If you don't know this, Josh is actually the underdog. So
By a long shot.
By a long shot. So, but next time I'm not going to tell you who did it, because now you have like, you want to see the underdog story.
Yeah, that's right.
And like, it's just playing with your emotions. And I'm not about that.
Great job, Isaiah. Isaiah's the man. He's so good at this stuff. Are you guys having fun?
Woo!
I just want to reiterate a lot of the stuff Isaiah was saying. If there was a lot of details you might have missed out on, like how many grams of coffee, how much water, like unless you have your notepad right in front of you, that might not be information that's super readily available. So we have all of that online, and if you go to our profile in the Little Bear Instagram or just on our website, we have a whole education page. And what that does is it has a few brew tutorial videos. We have an Aeropress one that we shot a little while back while they're off-roading in a Jeep, which is really fun to watch. We have a V60 video, which I'm going to do as well. And Isaiah has a really, really good V60 tutorial. And then we recently, hot off the press, just finished a intergalactic, interstellar Chemex tutorial where we put all of our savings away to send Isaiah Jaramillo into space. I think he might be the first brown person to ever be in space. We might need to fact check that, but it's possible. We wanted to make that happen. So yeah, so we sent him to space. We have a really sick tutorial video on Chemex. I know that's a crowd pleaser pour over method. Lots of people are super into Chemex, so that's a great way to brew more than just one cup. I know for a lot of people that are newer to specialty coffee, doing all of this work to get 1 cup of coffee seems like a lot. But we think it's worth it. But B, the Chemex is really great because you can brew several cups of coffee with that, which is really nice. So yeah, check that out. Check out that new tutorial. I'm gonna be doing just a typical pour over. So this is a Hario V60. It is what we use in the cafe. All of them are great. There's some plastic ones, some metal ones. There's some different temperature control in those. But yeah, we love the Hario V60. It's kind of our favorite way to make coffee. It's like our benchmark. So yeah, what I'm going to be brewing today is going to be our brand new Kenya. We have it on our website. You can buy a bag of that. We're doing 20% off for all the Renegade peeps. The code is just Renegade. So that's going to be 20% off all of the coffee on the store. We have our All-Sick blend, which is kind of like our standard blend. Costa Rica, which Isaiah brewed. Kenya, which I have right in front of me. And then we also have a really awesome honey process, Peru. All of them are on there. Great tasting notes to help you decide. But yeah, let's get started with this V60. If at any point you guys have any questions at all, just pop them right into the chat. We have people that are shouting them out at me to make sure I answer anything you might want to know. So yeah, first off, I'm going to rinse my paper filter. And this is going to take any papery flavor out of the filter, as well as simultaneously heat my vessel. After it's all the water has gone through, we're going to dump all that water out, because you don't want any non-brewed water in your cup. So then I'm going to be adding 21 grams of coffee. Today it is the washed Kenya. The tasting notes on this is sweet berries, citrus, and caramel. Cool. So I got 21 grams in the cup, or in the pour over, and I leveled it out so it's nice and flat. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to start a bloom. So I'm going to add 75 grams of water. I'm doing little bits of small circles just to make sure everything gets saturated. And then I'm going to take this little small spoon and just do a gentle stir or agitation. And what that does is just make sure there's no dry pockets of coffee stuck in there. We want to make sure everything is getting a little bit of hot water. You're going to see a lot of bubbles coming up on your bloom. That's the degassing. Now that the bloom's done, I'm doing a nice, slow, controlled center pour. So I'm just staying right in the middle of the coffee bed, not pouring too aggressively. And I'm going to pour up to 150 grams. That's our first pour. We got 2 more pours to go. We're staying center pour, adding it nice and slow. You don't have to have a gooseneck kettle, but these do help control the flow a lot better. All right, we're at a minute now, so I'm going to be adding water to the coffee up to 220 grams. Cool. So we're at 220. And in just 10 seconds, we're going to be doing our final pour. These first 2 pours are center pours, right in the center, nice and controlled. This last pour, I'm going to be doing small concentric circles just to make sure everything is wet. Even extraction is the key to good coffee. If your coffee is ground evenly and all of the coffee is extracted evenly, you're going to get a great cup. After I've added that last bit of water, I'm going to give it a little swirl and tap. And what that does is going to make sure any coffee on the outside of the pour over is now in the slurry and is getting extracted. And then the tap just sends it all to the bottom. And then we're just going to let the water drain out. Like we said about even extraction, that's our goal. So we don't want, that's why some grinders are nicer and a little bit more expensive than other ones. The little whirly blade grinders get the job done. But what that's going to offer is kind of like a pretty wide range between coarse and fine. And what that does is the coarse coffee is going to get less extractive than the fine coffee. And that's just going to change your flavor overall. And so that's why even extraction is a really huge part of getting good coffee. And also making sure all the coffee is in the hot water and is getting brewed rather than just sitting in the filter. Cool. So we are fully drained out. We're at 255. All my hot water is gone from the pour over into the carafe, which is exactly what we want. You want to see a nice flat bed. I'm sure you guys can't really see on here, but I'll talk about it anyways. You want to see a nice flat bed, and then on the outside, you don't want to see any of those big coffee grounds. There might be a little bit of fines that kind of look like dirt around the side of it, and that's okay. But you don't want you want all the coffee to be in the bed. So let's toss that. Let's get that out of the way, and let's try it. That's really good. Does anyone have any questions on pour overs or V60s or anything coffee brewing related? We're doing Aeropress today in V60, but if you have, and if you're like, hey, I can't figure this out on this method, give it a shout out, and we'll do everything we can to answer those. We are gonna do round 2 of the latte art throwdown. So Isaiah's gonna hop back on here. I'm gonna pour another latte. You won't know who's A or B this time, so he's gonna make it tricky. But yeah, we'll have that coming right at you.
Isaiah, we have a question from the chat.
Yes.
It says, which brewing method would you suggest for those just getting into making coffee from home?
Ooh.
Is either of them easier or harder to get right? It's from Sarah Gonzalez.
Thanks, Sarah. That's a great question. Glad you asked. I would say honestly, the Aeropress is gonna have probably a lower like entry level in the sense that you can mess it up a little, I guess so to speak, and it's still gonna be like a pretty good balanced cup of coffee. There's a little more wiggle room in my opinion. The difficult part about like pour overs is what I was saying earlier is that especially for like home grinders and stuff, it can be a little tricky to get that grind just right to like how you want it. Still totally doable, but I guess in summary, I would probably say that Aeropress has it's a little easier and it's also more versatile. So you could do a ton of different recipes. So that's my answer to that.
For instance, camping.
For instance, for example, camping. For example, hiking. For example, backpacking. For example, car camping. And
Glamping.
for example, glamping. See, the list goes on, really.
A new question that I'm coming up with is glamping camping?
Is glamping camping? You know, so my short answer is yes, it is. But it's its own experience, you know what I mean? It's like, I kind of compare it to like, you know, camping is like, it's like listening to an album, right? Like, carefully constructed. When it's right, it's right. Glamping's like a really good playlist. That's like, I'm picking and choosing everything I want for this. So there's something to be gained from both, but you just gotta be real about when you're actually glamping. And I don't think people that stay intense are as tough as they think they are, so that's just my opinion on the matter.
Will says that he misses you.
Will? I
Will
miss you
Fox.
too, Will. Oh, I know Will. Man, I do miss you. Come back and get your drip coffee. Alright, we're gonna start this. Oh wait, but like don't show them what you're pouring. And I'm not gonna announce it either this time.
Ooh, Isaiah, Matt's wondering what our go-to recipe for espresso is.
Ooh, I'm glad you asked. And if you stay tuned in, you'll get a more comprehensive look at it. But the short answer is 20 grams of coffee in and generally about 35 to 40 grams out. So that's the short recipe, but we actually are doing an espresso portion. So stay tuned. All right, ladies and gentlemen, round two. We have this Rosetta. This is Rosetta A, Slowzetta B. Rosetta A, Slowzetta B. Y'all tell us which one's better, which one's more beautiful, which one inspires an emotional feeling in you. Coffee, food, beverages, all about the emotional reaction it invokes. So let's get those votes in and don't mess it up. A, B. Send those A's in the chat for this bad boy. Send those B's in the chat for this one.
We got a B.
We got a B. We got a B.
B. B.
B.
B.
B.
B.
B.
B.
B.
I think they only know how to.
Oh, 1A. There's 1A.
There.
1B. Seven A's.
If y'all are looking for the A key on your keyboard, it's usually by the shift key.
Another B.
Got another B. We got one for A. You get it. You know, I think this is clear, guys.
We'll give it just a few more seconds.
A is holding on for dear life.
And we're calling it B is the winner.
Roaster James! Alright, you guys made it good, because now we gotta do round 3.
Now
for
we got a
tiebreaker.
final round.
Good job, guys. Right answer. So Matt, if you're still here, we're gonna do espresso right now. I'm gonna have my boy Josh behind the bar get me a shot ready, because we don't have espresso grinders over here. Those are hefty boys. But you know, if you do have an espresso like home brewing machine, it can be a little challenging to get your espresso to taste like how you want it, like in a cafe. And honestly, there can be like some real difficulties there that can be difficult to get past. But really, most home brewing machines, you should be able to do a decent job. Truthfully, the difficult part about espresso, especially if you have a home machine, is the way that they keep water temp, the water pressure in like the steam tank. But also the main thing is like how fine you need to grind it in order to get good espresso. I think a lot of people sometimes don't realize that it's very, very fine. You know, to the extent that we have espresso grinders that are dedicated to that and they don't really grind anything else. So we're gonna get some 20 grams. That being said, this faithful little Linea Mini has served us very well. Although it's being a little ornery today. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome, sir.
So just a little quick overview. So next time cafes are open and you're able to check out the barista, look what they're doing, you could really judge them on their tamp, which is like how well they press down and compress that bed of coffee. So if they're doing it all tilted, all that stuff, just say no. Ask them to redo it. At any rate, I guess I'm gonna go. All right.
We just need to see from the left.
I got you.
Beautiful.
Cool. So we got our steam one. We got our single group head right here. So we will just lock it into place like so. Pretty much all espresso machines have the same basic portafilter group head setup. So that should be pretty universal. So I'm going to make sure, I'm going to use our scale timer because when you get to extracting something as tiny as espresso, so keep in mind that we're getting between 1.5 to 2 ounces like total, that any little change is going to affect it like in a much bigger way than it would like a V60 or Aeropress because you're just working with smaller proportions. Imagine making a little tiny omelet. It's going to be hard. So we got this into place. We got our timer going almost. Set. Okay, so I'm going to start this off. So a commercial espresso machine will start out at a lower pressure and then go up. We will actually just start at a standard pressure like most home machines, and we're hoping to get like about a 30-second shot. So this is going to be pulling a little quicker, and it's kind of got a big flow to it. So this may have pulled like a little quicker than we'd ideally want. But another thing you're looking outside of just the time is kind of how it builds, and you'll see that technically there's 3 parts of an espresso. There's the crema, the body, and it's very difficult to see, but some people say that like the heart is at the very bottom of the espresso. So you want to make sure that there's like a nice good layer. This is kind of considered like the gaseous kind of sweet layer. So if you ever see people stir their espresso, basically they're stirring this crema into the espresso. One thing to keep in mind is that any coffee you use for espresso is going to be like way magnified as far as those flavor notes go. So much so that you might actually get really different flavor notes if you actually make one coffee with, say, an Aeropress or one coffee on your espresso machine. They're probably going to taste pretty different, or sometimes you can get, so like let's say there's like a citrus flavor note. That can come out really intensely in espresso. That's kind of part of the idea of espresso. It's concentrated, it's intense, you could drink it fairly quickly, and it gets the job done, especially for you caffeine fiends out there. I see you. But we're going to see how we did. Like I said, it pulled a little quick, so if a shot or even a pour over pulls too quickly, what you can expect is that it can be a little too acidic, a little bright, a little too tart at times. So if you ever are tasting that in a coffee, you can find up the grounds if you need to, and wait for basically a longer extraction time. That longer extraction time is basically going to balance out your coffee. So past under extraction, of course, you have like proper extraction, which is where all those sweet, fruity, vibrant flavor notes come out. If you keep extracting past that, let's say this went much slower, and we pulled a shot in 40 seconds, then we could expect like a really muddled, bitter, kind of muddy tasting espresso. So look out for those. That's true for all brew methods, but it's easier to tell an espresso because of how intense it is. So I'm going to see how we did. Takes a little trial and error. It's actually, if you believe me, quite good. I was surprised because seeing that, I wasn't sure. But like I said, when we're going for home brewing espresso, or excuse me, home espresso machines, you're really going for like, you can get like a good espresso. A lot of times it's not going to taste exactly like your cafe because there's really just more tools at a cafe at our disposal, and the machines we use are really just meant for consistent quality, which sometimes those home machines can like struggle with a little bit. But if you do have a home machine, hopefully this is helpful. And if you have any questions or want to up your espresso game at home, you can also brew espresso light coffee on an Aeropress. I mentioned that earlier. So that's kind of the gist of espresso. So espresso is kind of one of those things that after you become really familiar with like brewed coffee, maybe you're getting a really good palate for it, you're learning it like in cooler ways, and you're kind of seeing those flavor notes a little more. Espressos, in some ways, people kind of view it as like the step up because it can be a little abrasive if you're not used to it. But a good espresso shouldn't be too much, shouldn't be too acidic, shouldn't be too bitter. It should still be balanced, but it's always, or at least most of the time, going to be like a pretty intense way just because of the concentration. So just for reference, like espresso is going to be basically like a 1 to 1.5, 1 to 2 ratio of coffee to water. So that's really concentrated if you could think about that. Something like a Chemex, I don't know if y'all are familiar with it, that's going to be like a 1 to 17 ratio. So that just shows kind of the variety of what coffee can do and how it changes, like how you brew it and all that good stuff. So if y'all have any questions, let me know. We're getting ready for round 3, final round.
Kate Kaufman wants to know our thoughts on the French press.
Thoughts on the French press? I mean, any brewing method that you like is a good brewing method to me. We really try to kind of emphasize the subjectivity of tasting coffee. People do like different things. We personally don't use a French press, and me personally, the reason I particularly shy away from French presses is generally it's actually a lot of coffee for me, so unless I'm sharing with somebody, it doesn't make as much sense. But the big thing is the big wide metal mesh filter that lets a lot of grounds in. That's not necessarily what I prefer in my coffee. Some people do though, so if you do really like the really like robust, like you want a texture in your coffee, then French press is good. But even if you actually do want a cleaner French press, there are ways to do that. You could even incorporate like a paper filter in between the metal filter. There's usually a little screw thing. So if you find that your French press is a little too full, a little too much at first, then you could always think about screwing on like a paper filter. So I know a lot of people that brew in French press. They love it. It's not my personal favorite, but I can't stress enough that the importance of like if it's great for you and if you're really enjoying it, then keep it up if you found what works for you. I would also add that French press coffees, because of how full bodied they are like really good with cream. So if you like cream in your coffee, then a French press is a super good method. Something like a pour over, it could drown it out a little more, but something like a French press is gonna be able to come through like any cream, milk, oat milk. All you vegans out there, all you gluten-free people out there, shout out. But hope that answers your question on the French press. They've been around for a long time, so it's like respect. It's like one of the OG brewers, you know. We gotta give respect where it's due, but sometimes we just gotta move on to other things too. So.
Are there any brewing methods we haven't talked about that you like?
If there's any like real coffee snobs out there, some people feel some type of way about the V60. Even though I like it, I think you can make a really good cup of coffee. But if you're really you're like, I've mastered the V60, I'm done, it's over, no more, then I think the Kalita Wave is actually another really good pour over method. It is actually a little more, I guess you could say time intensive in the sense that you're going to be like paying a little closer attention to it because of the way it channels. So a Kalita, instead of like just cone, it has like a pretty flat bottom. So it's easier to extract an even bed. And that's kind of why people really like enjoy them, especially like a lot of coffee professionals really like the Kalita. I also really like it. I think you could do really great with the V60, but Kalita Wave's a really cool pour over too. And if you haven't like checked it out, and like I said, you're already familiar with the V60, or you could truthfully get it in place of a V60 if you like, if you want to be a little different, or if you kind of want to just experiment with something new. So Kalita is cool. I support Kalita. Okay, we got the boys coming. We got this final pour. Make it count. Make it count. Laser focused right now. I don't know what you're talking about. These competitors couldn't be distracted if I tried.
Final round.
Okay.
Someone said Jerry Bones. Any comment on that, Josh?
These are Jerry's bones.
Okay. Let's get ready to rumble. A, B. We got the MC Escher type tulip up in here. We got the Swan, who, he's doing his thing. He, maybe lost his New Year's resolution a little bit, but he's still in it. He's still in it. So A, we got B, A, B. You tell us. A's and B's in the chat.
We got 1A.
1A. Come on. Do I got two?
Any more votes?
Bring him in. Another A. Three more A's.
Can I get 3 more B's? Could I get
More
4
A's.
more B's?
1B.
1B.
Amy Renee said Puff Smoky Swan.
Okay.
B,
Ooh, you
A.
got some team support up in here.
Another A.
I don't have all these fingers. This isn't even accurate, but I know which one's winning. Should I break the toes out? Y'all let me know in the chat if I should break the toes
Take
out.
his shoes off.
Take his
Can
shoes
you
off.
explain what the question is? What are we doing?
We are voting in the final round. Which latte art is more beautiful? Which latte art inspires you more?
This.
James.
Which latte makes you want to drink it the most? A, or B? B. A, B. So far we got A in the lead. So if y'all want to say
You
B,
can get with A, or you can get with B.
if you want some B, throw that in. We got a little longer, but
Seems like A's the winner, everybody.
all right. James the Roaster comes out on top.
Yeah.
W's in the chat.
Which would you have voted for, Isaiah, and why? Tell the people. Tell the people what they're looking for in that latte art.
Yes. I think chat made the right choice. I would also say A. The reason is because not only is the design itself a little more creative, it is pretty symmetrical. You have really good contrast. The contrast is better on this guy than this guy. You could tell that Josh poured a little too quickly right here, so it started blending in a little bit more with that darker foam. And then, it got a little too wide. And so generally, if you want like a really good swan, you want like super good structure here. So it just got a little compressed, that's all.
What part of the swan shows that he gave up on his New Year's resolution?
I would say, if I had to say, it would be his 2020 booty. If I were to,
His quarantine
give him
booty?
some, yeah, it's his quarantine booty. We're all there though. It's good. We're straight. Like, this guy's chilling, and he's good. He's not even mad that he lost. because he's just straight chilling. But thank you guys for participating. We really appreciate it. We had fun. James is like our reigning champ, so honestly, we're just trying to like beat him. So next time we'll get him though. Next time, once you know we got somebody up to speed. I'm just playing. All right. Soon we got James.
We're doing we're gonna switch up the flow a little bit.
Switch up.
We are gonna be doing a Irish coffee tutorial. So Little Bear loves beverages of all kinds. We love coffee to start the day, and we love a little bit of booze to finish it off. So, are you feeling good to go?
Ready to roll.
All right. This is Isaac. He's gonna be doing Irish coffee.
What's up, America? Hopefully people outside of America. Sounds like one person from Brazil, which is cool. So my name is Isaac Fox. I'm one of the owners here at Little Bear Coffee. And another thing we really love about our city is our beverage here. We have a bunch of incredible breweries, awesome distilleries, and awesome cocktail bars. One of which is actually ours. It's called Daydream Rum Bar, and we have a lot of really fun cocktails over there that we like to make sure to focus on nice specialized ingredients and cool ways of making them. But today we're going to talk about one of the most iconic cocktails when we're talking coffee cocktails, which is the Irish coffee, which is usually seen in a mug like this. You guys have hopefully had one before. They're super awesome. So for this tutorial, literally all you're going to need is a mug. Transparent is always preferable because of the way it looks, and I'll get to that a little more later. An Irish whiskey of your choice, heavy cream, and some freshly brewed coffee. And then the last thing we need is simple syrup. So to talk kind of through how this cocktail goes together, all the different components we'll go through just one by one, just so you can know what all goes into it. So we're going to start with our Irish whiskey, and this cocktail is built just inside of a glass. So you don't have to make it in a mixing tin and then move it to this. It's all just built in here, which is awesome. So we're going to use Powers Irish Whiskey. There's a ton of really good ones you could use, like I think Jameson is probably the most popular. Powers has been around for a really, really long time. There's Bushmill, Redbreast, all sorts of really tasty different Irish whiskeys you can use. But today we're going to be using Powers. I like this one a lot for Irish coffees because it has a really nice honey flavor to it, which I think goes really well with any sort of cream and coffee flavoring, which is perfect. So you're going to need an Irish whiskey of your choice. You're going to need freshly brewed coffee. What we're picking is All Sick. This is our staple blend that we always have. We use it for espresso, pour over, in our drip coffee here in the cafes. It's a great one for at home. Very well rounded, very well balanced. So perfect for a cocktail where a lot of different flavors are meshing together. If you did want to pull out a special note from the coffee, though, you could always switch to a different single origin based on a flavor you prefer in your Irish coffee. And then last, we just need nice heavy cream and then simple syrup. So when we're talking simple syrup, this is just equal parts of sugar to water. And there's a couple different ways of making this. What we prefer to do is actually take one of our cafe scales and we'll just put something on it and weigh out equal parts. And then that's the easiest way to measure it out. Measuring cups work totally fine, but to us that just saves a little bit of time for you. And then we just throw it right in a blender and blend it until all of it is into one and super transparent, because you want it to be a see-through liquid. If there's still clumps of the sugar, you haven't blended it quite right. You want it all to incorporate so it has a better flavor, because if you're getting chunks of sugar and stuff, it's just not quite the same. The other way you can do that is just combine the water and sugar on a stovetop and just stir until it's completely transparent. Just don't stir too long though, or like cook it too long, or the flavor will change a little bit. And then heavy cream, you can just get this at any sort of grocery store to grab. So to talk a little bit about how this cocktail works, we'll just start by building it, and I'll kind of explain as we go along why it works the way it does. So we're going to start with our Irish whiskey, which is Powers. You're going to do 1.5 ounces. This is called a jigger, which is super helpful for measuring cocktail stuff. It has two, like a smaller side and a bigger bell side. The smaller side can measure from 1/2 to 3/4 to 1 full ounce. The other side is for 1.5 ounces to 2 ounces. So it's just really helpful to get all the different ingredients, as you'll see going through this. So you're going to start with 1.5 ounces of Irish whiskey. We're just going to pour that straight into the glass. We're going to do 0.75 of an ounce of simple syrup. And then you're going to do 4 ounces of freshly brewed hot coffee. Now make sure your coffee is really fresh and hot, because if it's slightly lukewarm or whatever, because you're mixing it with 2 already room temperature ingredients, it can just really quickly get rid of the heat, which is really important when you have the heavy cream on top with the hot coffee. You want to have those like contrasting heat elements. So you're going to put 4 ounces of freshly brewed coffee of your choice. Like I said, we're using our all 6 staple blend. The metal jigger is not ideal because it burns your fingers like crazy, but it is what it is. And then you're going to take a spoon and you're going to stir to incorporate. And this is an important piece because if you don't stir it quite right, sometimes you'll be getting different flavors on and off, which is not super ideal when you're trying to get a well-balanced cocktail. So lastly, when you have your heavy cream, don't just pour it straight on top, because the thing we're looking for is a layered effect. So the difference is if you were to pour it on just right now with the heavy cream not being whipped, it would just sink into the drink, which is not the way we want it to look. And it's also different because when you take a sip and it's layered properly, you get a really nice, you'll get to be able to taste the cream with the Irish coffee in the bottom. If it mixes in, it just dilutes it. There's no heat. It doesn't taste quite right. So make sure to whip it in any certain way. There's a few different methods you can use. A lot of people just take a bowl, throw it in and whip it, and you're going to want to whip until soft peaks, which just means it doesn't look watery. It's pulling up a little bit, so you know that it's like got a thick consistency to it at that point. Then what you're going to, the way we're going to do it is in shaker tins. So you take from your strainer, you can take the coil off of it, and you just throw it straight in a shaker tin, and that kind of acts similarly to the whisk, where it'll just kind of like incorporate it, mix it all up to where it gets thicker. Another thing that works great for this, if you don't have this at home, is just one of those protein shaker bottles with a little ball inside of it. Exact same concept. This just looks a little more professional. So you're going to need 2 ounces of heavy cream, but sometimes it's hard to whip exactly 2 ounces, so we're just going to add a decent amount to our shaker. And again, if you're whisking, that's one way to do it, or if you like to shake, that's totally fine too. But you're just going to shake for, I would say, probably 15 plus seconds just to make sure. Because again, if it's not properly shaken or whipped, it'll just sink into the cocktail and it won't taste right or good at all. So let's see here. So a little thicker. Perfect. So now you're going to take your coil out. And now you can either pour directly on top or scoop it out, depending on how thick it is. I think it's much easier to just pour, so I'll show you how that works. You just slowly, you don't want to pour too hard or it will incorporate into the bottom, which is what we're talking about. You don't want to see. Perfect. So just like that, now we have, if you can see in the video, we have the perfect line between the hot coffee and the cold cream, which when you take a sip now is perfect because you're going to get to taste both at the same time without incorporating them. So it's the flavor you want without getting a lukewarm cocktail, which is super cool. So to give a little background and context to this cocktail, this is a variation of what's called a flip. So a flip is something that's a fortified wine or spirit that's mixed with a rich tasting ingredient and then rounded out with some sort of dairy component. Sometimes that's eggs, coconut cream, heavy cream, milk, any of those sorts of things. So what we're doing today is a variation of flip. It's actually a hot cocktail, obviously. And the flavors that are combined for our spirit, we have the Irish whiskey. And then the rich component is going to be the simple syrup mixed with coffee, which gives it that really like rich, obviously coffee flavor you want. And then the cream is what balances it out. Now, the thing that's important to remember about why this cocktail works is heat, when incorporated into cocktails, you have to be a little careful because it gives the perception of alcohol to be much more intense on your taste buds. So if you were to put, like a lot of cocktail recipes you'll see at home have 2 ounces as like a standard for the spirit you put in. We want to make sure it's 1.5 ounces because, or even some people prefer 1 ounce just because it gets really, when alcohol is hot, it just has a really harsh flavor and like, not flavor, but a harsh like tone to it. And which is also why people sip whiskey and all that sort of thing on the rocks. Not only does it dilute it, but it also gives it a colder temperature, making it not as harsh. Secondly, when a cocktail is hot, alcohol will evaporate and it comes into the aroma, which is kind of like a volatile kind of smell to it, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's something that's not ideal because when you're talking cocktails, you want to think about not only the taste, but the aroma is a huge portion of what makes you like or not like something. So the cool thing about this cocktail is it is capped off and sealed with a heavy cream, so you're not actually getting into those volatile smells. So for us, we personally like to garnish it with some finely grated coffee, or not finely grated, finely ground coffee, fresh coffee, and then a lot of people too will like to grate nutmeg over the top of it, all sorts of options. We've even done chocolate, all sorts of things. So whatever flavor you think would be kind of fun to pull out of it, that's kind of what we would recommend. But for us, since we're a coffee shop, we like to just put a little bit of freshly ground coffee on it. And the reason we like this as the primary is because you kind of want the aroma to be what the cocktail has inside of it. So now when you come up to take a sip, not only will you get like the creaminess, but you also get to smell the coffee flavor. So let's see how it tastes. Perfect. So yeah, all around it's super. The cool thing about this cocktail is all of the flavors just combine to more unique, independent flavor. So it's not, you're not just getting crazy harsh whiskey. It doesn't just taste like a normal cup of coffee. It's a really unique new thing. And then the creaminess makes it perfect for like an after dinner dessert style cocktail. This is also a great thing for brunch. Really, whenever you feel like having some sort of booze and whiskey with some coffee, this is the thing to do. So if you guys have any questions, now would be a time. Happy to answer anything.
The people want to know if there's any substitutions you like to make to the recipe or anything you recommend.
So we've actually made in the past what we called like a Jamaican coffee, and in that we swapped the Irish whiskey for a Jamaican rum, since we are a rum bar across the street. And then we also made a coconut whipped cream, which was kind of fun because instead of it being, this is like more of a traditional taste to this cocktail. When you throw rum in it, it's like kind of fun to bring in a tropical flair. Another cool thing about that is if anybody has any concerns with dairy, the coconut cream is also like a super fun alternative that has the exact same appeal. It just gives it a new fun flavor. Trying to think of some other fun ones. We've done, Josh and I one time did a peppermint white chocolate one for Christmas, which was super good. So we made a white chocolate. So the cool thing about this, 2 ways you can tweak this to make it really fun for yourself is the simple syrup. Since this is equal parts water to sugar, a fun thing to do is you can swap out the water for something else. So like a lot of times you can make juice syrups, you can make tea syrups, coffee syrups. So like in other cocktails, we've even just done equal parts coffee to sugar to make more of like a coffee liqueur flavor without adding any alcohol to it or whatever. And then that can go into a cocktail itself. And then the other thing you want to think about is when you're shaking the cream, like I did here, you can put all sorts of stuff in here as well. So we've added simple syrup to make it a little sweeter. If people want it sweeter, you can put coconut in here. You can do any sort of thing that would make this a more fun variation to you at home. But yeah, overall, it's more just about the flavor you want to take out of it. But to us, I think whiskey and rum are the 2 that fit the best in this.
So we have a question that's like, what if I don't like coffee, but I still really like whiskey? Can I just put the cream on the whiskey? Or what would you recommend?
Yeah, totally.
Repeat the question.
So the question that was said was just if you really like whiskey and like this concept of coming up with a cocktail, but don't necessarily like the coffee component of it, is there any other alternatives you could do? I don't know off the top of my head something that would work specifically well for like this exact format, but like a hot toddy is a great option for if you want like a hot style of cocktail. That one, the citrus in it is what kind of dulls back the aroma and adds the spices to it as opposed to the coffee. And that's a super simple one. All sorts of great recipes online for that. Trying to think of other hot. I don't know. I think probably if you're wanting to specifically do hot with whiskey, the hot toddy would be the closest if you don't want coffee involved.
For the coffee nerds, is there any coffee selection? Do you lean to certain coffees or flavor notes?
For me, I don't think a delicate tea-like coffee works well for this because the thing you always want to think about when you're balancing a cocktail is what your spirit tastes like first and foremost. Because if the cocktail has like a really prominent flavor like whiskey does, that's really can be hard to counteract with a flavor that isn't as strong and bold as its spirit. So if we threw something in here that was really delicate and tea-like, kind of like Isaiah was talking about some of our other coffees, that wouldn't quite stand up as well to the whiskeys you'd want it to because you want both flavors. You don't want one to shine through. But the other thing that's cool is like, once you get a palate ready for figuring out like the cocktail you really want to make to your flavors, like flavor preferences. You can also do like a tea-like cocktail, and you can just pull back on the whiskey a little bit, and that'll like really help to make the whiskey not so prominent in there. So if you pick a tea-like coffee, you can still make that a really fun thing. I would probably prefer doing some sort of more like South American coffee, something with a little more body to it. I think like the chocolate notes, like I said, this has like that the whiskey notes with honey. So like if you want the honey to be rounded out with something, I would say some sort of chocolatey thing would taste better than more fruit notes. So that would be my recommendation. But any other questions? Take a 5-minute break.
Yes.
Cool.
We'll be back soon with James.
All right, guys. In these 5 minutes, I'm going to drink this, and I'll see you guys in 5 minutes, okay? Be right back.
welcome back. Or if you're just joining us, welcome. So James and I are just gonna kind of talk. We kind of want to like demystify the idea of specialty coffee. We kind of want to explain to you a little bit about like what specialty coffee means, why you go into some coffee shops and they like, treat you some type of way. Just different mentalities, kind of the ethos of specialty coffee, and how like there's a lot of I guess like conflation with the term. Not a lot of people know like what it means, at least on a customer level. There's really technical things that we'll go through that are covered in it, but like we just want to explain to y'all what's Starbucks versus Little Bear or whatever coffee shop you want to fill in. Generally, we'll refer to like the older style coffee as like maybe second wave coffee or like commodity coffee, just for clarity's sake. And then a lot of times specialty coffee is referred to as like third wave coffee, craft coffee, artisan coffee if you like the word artisan. But I guess first I just want James to talk a little bit about like his experience with coffee, kind of what got you into coffee, what's your journey been like.
Kind of to give some background, I've been in coffee for about 8 years now and completely accidentally fell into it. It ended up just being a super big passion in my life. I was absolutely a second wave drinker when I first started drinking coffee.
What do you mean when you say that?
Yeah, what I mean when I say second wave drinker, typically someone who prefers roast profile over delicate, bright flavors in a coffee. Typically putting a lot of cream and sugar in your coffee, or there are some specialty drinks. I was a Starbucks fan. Which there's nothing wrong with.
Shout out to the Starbucks fan.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. But you grow in your taste, and
some would say evolve.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean you do evolve. I remember the first time I tried a black cup of coffee and actually enjoyed it. For a long time, I think I was kidding myself that I enjoyed drinking black coffee. But
what was that first cup like? Walk us through it. Set the scene. Where were you, little James?
I was I'd been working in coffee for about a year and a half.
Cool.
And our manager or assistant manager at the time brought back a bag of coffee from Denver, Colorado, Sweet Bloom, which is one of the biggest. I think in the Southwest.
For sure.
I had no idea how to brew. I actually brewed it on a French press. Didn't weigh out any coffee, just threw it in there. But, it was something different. It was something new. And at that point, I had actually just started roasting for the coffee company I was working for at the time and wanted to change everything up.
Oh. Cool.
Yeah, so
as far as like roasting goes, were you roasting in like what we call the second wave style?
Yeah, absolutely. There are people who can roast coffee darker than we do at Little Bear, extremely well. And at the time, that was the flavor profile that I thought I enjoyed. There are two stages once a coffee is developed in the roaster. There's first crack and second crack. And second crack is what you'd consider to be a dark roast. When you hit that point, a lot of the proteins and acids in the coffee are burned off and turned into carbon. So you really do get...
So it's the acid crack.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. Some people love that, carbon, caramely flavors.
Right.
So, that's what I was doing.
A good analogy I like to use... Actually, let me just open this up. So, like, what do you think... What does specialty coffee mean in your head? when you say you're a specialty coffee roaster, what does that mean to people who hear that?
To me, what that means is responsibly sourcing, typically lighter roasts, um, great service, and more emphasis on coffee being a culinary element rather than just something to wake you up in the morning.
Totally. Yeah, and the emphasis I would maybe add to that of quality over quantity. You hear that a lot. At Little Bear, we really only offer one size for all our drinks. They're set recipes. Not only does it help consistency, but like I think a really big part of like the heart of the specialty coffee movement is really like stop and enjoy it, right? Like
Yeah.
we want to get outside of that like um, almost fast food mindset with coffee. And again, like Starbucks has done their fair share of things. They've paved the way in a lot of ways. But at the same time, I think where a lot of specialty shops' heart is like, hey, coffee doesn't have to be something that you just get through, right? Like it's
Right.
not just something that you need a ton of and then like kill it and then maybe get a ton more later. It's like you can actually appreciate it. And like if you start your day with something that just tastes good and isn't just like a means to an end, I think we just want to refocus on that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think, if you look, we kind of have said third wave coffee, and some people don't know what that means, there were two waves that came before us, and I think those were super important things. To kind of briefly summarize that, I think the first wave was getting coffee in every home. Um, the Folgers can or diner coffee across America, coffee in every home.
For sure.
And then, in the 70s when Starbucks opened, that I'm not sure exactly when they kind of switched their business model from what it originally was to closer to what we see today. But the second wave was when you started seeing those shops pop up on every corner.
Totally.
And, it was kind of Americanized coffee. If you travel the world and, especially Europe, if you order a coffee, you're going to end up with espresso. So, when all that kind of came over here, it was just different. It was, and then now, as early, I think, as the 80s was the first time specialty was ever mentioned, but it really gained traction in the 90s, is when this third wave kind of started emerging.
Totally.
Yeah.
And some people, I think, can use these terms like third wave, specialty, craft, whatever, as like kind of a way to bludgeon people like over the head with like, this is the right way to do coffee. And while I would say that it does go beyond taste in a lot of ways, because as James was saying earlier, when we talk about sourcing coffee, just I guess to pave the way, like, why is this coffee so expensive, James? So like this is 12 ounces. Generally we're around the $20 range for 12 ounces. Why do we do that?
Well, a lot of these farms that we're buying from, it takes a lot more work to grow specialty grade coffee. Typically, specialty grade coffee is, kind of hard to explain the pointing system in a brief amount of time. But it's scored 80 points or above on a scale of 100 is considered specialty coffee. I would say 99% of the time that's Arabica coffee, and it's even a smaller portion of that.
Yep.
And Arabica is more prone to disease. It's harder to grow, and then there are more strains of that specific plant that can either be more susceptible to disease, a little stronger to disease. Basically, it's harder to grow. And so that's one reason why this might be a little more expensive. We also want to be working directly with the farmers, or as close as we can. With everything going on in the world, we may need to cancel we were planning an origin trip to Colombia or Costa Rica. And but anyway, we want to work directly with farmers. And
Why is that though?
I think a big part of it is we want to, we're the end of a super long chain um, of events. We're the last maybe 5 or 10% of a lot of work that goes into making this coffee what it is.
Totally.
Um, and so, we have kind of a lot of weight on us to roast this to where it'll taste the best it can, and then brew it, super specifically, and not only in our shop, but teach people who buy our coffee as well.
For sure. Yeah, and that's why when we talk about these things, like we were just discussing before this, how like specialty coffee is not one thing. So, a lot of the Specialty Coffee Association, which is kind of like the crowning entity for the specialty coffee world, for the most part, I mean, they talk about the scoring system basically that James was talking about. But if you were buying maybe a really good quality coffee, but you're roasting it really, not great, and it's being prepared not great, then to me, you lose that specialty coffee or what we're trying to show you in the coffee.
Right.
And I think like a really good contrast and a good like illustration I always heard about when you compare, say, second wave or third wave, or for our sakes, we'll just say like a more traditional medium to medium dark roast versus what we generally do, which is generally lighter roast. Sometimes we're bridging closer to medium, but it's in that light category almost always. And so I like the analogy of like if you're cooking a steak, right, and you have like a filet mignon steak, nice, juicy, awesome. A lot of, culinary experts, chefs, whatnot, will, recommend you eat it rare, medium rare. The reason for that is because you can taste all of the differences in the cut and the meat. Let's say you put that side by side to like a T-bone steak, cook them both medium rare. You're going to see why that filet mignon is better, so to speak, right?
Right.
But not only that, but let's say you cook both of them well done, right? Well done. So basically what you're doing is you're putting these two products and you're cooking them so much that they're virtually indistinguishable. So essentially if you have a well done filet mignon, a well done T-bone, not to say you couldn't ever tell, but they're going to be a lot closer than they could be if you were to cook them properly. The same is true for like coffee. So when you're roasting a little darker, as James was saying, you're getting carbony, caramely, more robust flavors, and that comes from the actual roasting process rather than from the bean itself, where it's grown, the variety, how it's processed. There's a ton that goes into like these flavor notes. There's a lot there, but a flavor note, flavor note list on a dark roast bag, a lot of them are very similar. You'll notice that if you start paying attention. So basically you just homogenize the coffee, and you could use nearly any grade coffee, roast it dark, and you'll get a similar product, maybe with a little variation. Our whole heart, I think, and I'll send it out to James, is to like show those unique coffee characteristics.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every region is different. Kenyas are typically brighter coffees to something like a Colombia. A Colombian coffee, you'll get a lot more caramel flavors, maybe vague sweetness, nuttiness. Whereas a Kenya will be more fruit forward. Not this one specifically isn't super bright like Kenya typically is. That's a characteristic you'll typically find in Kenya, is almost like a grapefruit acidity. But we can take these coffees from all over the world and roast them to a point where that we have competitions where we do what's called a blind cupping, and based on if you can distinguish what a coffee is, or so
Totally, yeah. And I guess to touch on what you were saying earlier as far as like the chain of command goes, I think it's a really important part to basically emphasize. And James had it right in saying that we're the last like 10 to 20% of this coffee process. Like when you buy a bag, you don't always think about everything that's went in from the very beginning to the very end. And part of like why we'll brew smaller cups of coffee so you could pay a little more attention is part of what's kind of tied into that is like we want you to kind of think about what goes into this, and not even it doesn't stop with coffee, right? Like, you know, food. It's true. Like knowing where it comes from, how it's being processed, the people that are putting in work. Unfortunately, there is exploitation in coffee. There's more exploitation in commodity coffee. People are, making progress, but there's still a long way to go. But keep in mind that if you're paying more for a bag of coffee, you're paying more for a latte. Everyone else involved in that process, that chain of command that James was talking about, ideally gets paid more. And another thing to add on to that is we're working with like very small co-ops. We're working with very small estates. So like, a company like Starbucks or very large coffee companies, it's difficult to keep up with that demand. So you have to go to these bigger coffee farms, coffee plantations, and generally when you expand like that, that's when you can start seeing, some exploitation in some ways, and there's a whole sustainability part of it
Right.
as well. Coffee trends have increased for years and years and years and years and years. The demand for coffee is continuing to go up. So we're really faced, like, as specialty roasters, trying to be responsible. We're faced with issues that are really daunting, and that luckily people are researching and getting into how to make coffee ultimately sustainable. But in the next several years, that's going to be for sure at the forefront of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And, making it worth it for farmers to even grow coffee. Coffee isn't a super beneficial or profitable business for farmers to grow, but they do it all the same. So, companies, I won't name them, but there are companies who part of their vision and mission is they will pay 25 cents more per pound, which, in other countries is quite a bit more, just so the farmer is getting that little bit extra per pound,
Totally.
which makes a huge difference to them. And there are places all over the world where specifically people who are being exploited just decide to stop growing coffee. So in a world where it's continuously growing in demand, we're actually seeing less and less coffee because it's not as profitable for the farmer,
Right.
as it should be.
Right. Yeah, and not only that, but essentially a good thing that's come out of specialty coffee is that refocusing on that of like the you hear fair trade. Not all coffee that doesn't say fair trade is not fair trade. Just for reference, we this is a ballpark, but we pay maybe 3 to 4 times the amount of what maybe a commodity coffee roaster would buy. So if you think about that in terms of like how it translates, that's 3 to 4 times more for everybody else. I kind of just want to summarize. So for specialty coffee, we're looking at responsible sourcing, sustainability, proper roasting, proper preparation, and then I think kind of like for us, especially at Little Bear, there's a lot of specialty roasters out there. We're not the first, but like where our heart was is that we knew a lot of people. We're kind of getting into the underbelly of the third wave specialty coffee movement. A lot of people's experience is not that good, truthfully.
Yeah, I mean, Little Bear's mission statement is love people, use coffee, and we want that to be the focus. Is anyone who walks into our doors, we want them to feel loved and them to be appreciated for walking in. And whether that be streaming this and teaching people how to make a pour over, or coming into the cafe and talking to us, we love those interactions, and especially now we're missing that a lot.
Totally. And what do you think might be the reason that for a lot of people, specialty coffee has been kind of associated with like snobbery or pretentiousness?
I think, gosh, man, that's a great question.
Yeah, it is.
I think when you really start getting into coffee, you you care, and so that comes across as maybe egotistical, or you feel special because you're in this to us super important business. And whether that be a barista giving you dirty looks for putting cream in your coffee, which
Which
you
we
know,
will do.
yeah,
I'm just kidding.
I think, especially at Little Bear, we'll share a concern. If there's a coffee that doesn't taste good with cream, we'd rather tell you that than not.
Totally.
We've carried coffees where if you put cream in them, it will curdle the half and half.
For sure.
And
yeah.
that just wouldn't be an enjoyable experience. And
Totally.
So
Yeah.
I think some of it may be misconception, and some of it is just people being egotistical.
No, I think I totally think that's true. I think you totally have to separate when a barista is actually being a jerk versus when like they might actually be trying to like help your experience. And so like on the consumer end, it's up to you guys, or if we go into a shop, to be the kind of people that are willing to receive like maybe some advice, right? So a chef might not recommend you put ketchup all over your steak, right?
Right.
So it's not always that direct of a comparison, but I think separating what might just be a barista being pretentious versus what might actually be them trying to help you, I think is really important, because it's both.
Well, yeah, and I think there's also a difference between a barista, rolling their eyes at a customer for asking for cream or sugar, and taking the time to explain to a customer why they, and in the end, it's up to the consumer whether they want cream or sugar, or mocha extra sweet or a black cup of coffee. It's up to them, and it's our job to support customers regardless if we agree or disagree with what tweaks they want to make to our coffee.
Totally. And I think, tying all of this in really to the conversation of like the way we want to be responsible and like I guess live out our mission to like love people, in that like our responsibility when we're in the cafe as baristas is to basically give whoever walks in the same kind of like respect no matter where they are in their coffee journey, but also like to show them if they're interested in learning. And like a lot of times, and this is just true of human nature, I think, is like we do get really stuck in our ways, and when you like something, you like something.
Yeah.
So it's like, I like cream and sugar. I'm going to stay liking it. I'm going to keep liking it. So sometimes it's a little hard to break out of that. But at the same time, I like to kind of like, I guess, tip people off of like, James and I and some of our other baristas, all of our other baristas to some extent, have put a lot of time and care and attention into like what the product is. So like we care about it and we respect it and we try not to be wasteful. And so like when we present it to you, it's really just like we want you to try it in the way that we'd want to drink it first, or the way that we think that it'd be best. And then you kind of use that as a road marker. And again, by the end of the day, taste is subjective, and not everyone's going to be on the same train with the same coffees. But at the same time, I've seen really a lot more, like when people are willing to go out on a limb and try something, I think they're usually really like pleasantly surprised at. I've had people ask me if black coffee has sweetener in it and stuff, because there are natural sugars in the coffee, and,
Right.
and like not a lot of people know that.
What do you guys think of breve? The people want to know.
Like just using it for a latte.
They said, how do you feel about a perfect breve?
Probably a breve latte.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. It gives it some more. The question was, what do we think about breve? Breve is just half and half instead of using whole milk or 2%. And yeah, it's really good. It's creamier than a typical latte. I don't think there's anything wrong.
Yeah, it has more fats in it. So the taste is gonna be different. My only like personal like thing with breves is not that because people drink them all day and really enjoy them. I tend to get this like coating, like this fatty coating in my mouth that I don't personally prefer, but like people often are willing to trade that for like the full body texture of half and half. So that's more of like a personal thing. But it steams really well. But generally speaking, because when you talk about steaming milk, what you're talking about is like sugars, proteins, and fats. And so like those need to be the right balance to get the right texture and then in turn kind of the right flavor. That's why whole milk for most cafes is really the gold standard because it's like a good mix of all of those. Half and half is a little heavier on one. But again, it's really a little bit of a trade-off. I tend to think that if you're gonna have a breve, like a pretty good like size is like an 8-ouncer or a 6-ouncer.
Yeah. After that, personally, it just gets a little heavy.
Yeah, it can get a little heavy. Like if you think about a 12 or 16 ounce, like full of half and half, it can be a little much depending on who you are. But overall, we approve.
Have you guys tried a blue corn latte?
A blue corn latte? Have I tried a blue corn latte? I have not. I've not tried.
I haven't tried a blue corn latte.
Where
I've
can I
tried
get one?
blue corn tortillas. I like those. I haven't tried blue corn lattes though. I'm sorry. Yeah, tell James and I where we can get one, and we will scout it out.
Goldberry says they're trying to get hired as a barista but don't have experience other than home. Any advice for where to start and what tips you might have?
So Goldberry was asking, they'd like to be a barista and they don't have any experience. I didn't have any experience either, and a big part of it is bugging cafes by going in consistently.
That's probably most of it.
Yeah, most of it is just trying really hard to get a job at a cafe.
Totally.
And just pick one that you're super stoked about. I'll private message me. I'll give you Isaiah's phone number, and you can just blow him up all the time.
Send me your resi.
Yeah, come into Little Bear, drop off your resume.
Unless there's another shop, in which case do it there.
It also depends where you are in the country, because I know, like in Portland, they require that you have experience in some cafes. Something we love to do is actually hire people without any experience, just because we can train them good habits or the habits we prefer at Little Bear rather than bad habits they might have picked up at another cafe.
What are some traits of a good barista?
Ooh.
A people person first.
Yeah, that's literally what we look for. I mean, at our shop specifically, you will find some variation, but you had to be nice to somebody. I mean, you can, but not
but it
really
won't be genuine. You can see the deadness behind. Like, I hate to call them out, but Chick-fil-A, like their employees just have that dead look in their eye. Where, like whenever they say "my pleasure," you can tell they don't really want to say "my pleasure."
You see the cold, steely look. No, but I would add on to people person for sure. Multitasking, but honestly, for me, I was trash at multitasking before. But like working in coffee, I feel like I could sprout new arms sometimes. The big thing is like if you're really interested in getting on at like a really a specialty cafe or really any cafe, it's always helpful to like learn as much as you can. And then to James's point, after you've learned what you can that would be useful for them, like learn what kind of coffee they do, learn what kind of, what this particular cafe's vision or mission is. Learn about that. Learn maybe some fundamentals of coffee. We have a few resources like tutorials and stuff on our website. Shameless plug. But do that and then be really persistent because, coffee shops, like anywhere else, do eventually lose people. People move on and quit. You do have to consider that most coffee shops are really like small staff. So sometimes it can be a little more challenging. And like, we're really thankful. A lot of our staff has been around for a while. But it really boils down to like being, and I would also add on to that, like if I see a regular customer and they're really hyped about wanting to work at the cafe, for example, to me that's a huge plus because it's like they've been here, they know what we're trying to do, they know like what message we're trying to get across. So,
is black coffee still popular, or is it all about the latte these days?
I mean, I prefer black coffee in the morning. The question was Is it
Is black
I'm
coffee
sorry,
still popular?
is black coffee still popular? Or is it all about the latte? And personally,
You know what? The answer is neither, actually.
yeah, this is
It's
true.
that TikTok coffee that's all whipped
Oh,
up.
the whipped cream
That's what's
coffee.
in.
Yeah,
That's what's in. That's fourth wave.
yeah,
No, I think both are in.
yeah.
You got latte people. You got black coffee people.
It's all up to preference.
You got
really.
everyone in between.
Yep.
I'll drink like lots of black coffee, lots of espresso, but special days I'll
Yeah.
drink. Now it's getting warmer though. Ice lattes.
Oh,
Ooh.
dude. Iced Little Bear latte with oat milk is like my go-to sweet drink.
There it is. This man still drinks sweet drinks.
I do. Yeah.
Specialty
it happens.
roaster can do it. Then we all can do it. Sweet.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I got. Is there any more questions? If y'all have any general questions, if you want any hot takes, controversial opinions, definitely
Yeah.
let us know.
Isaiah and I disagree on quite a bit. So if you pluck the right string, then you'll see. We'll be sitting here for a couple hours.
Yeah. What's a hot take you could think of right off the... I don't like Star Wars. I hate Star Wars. I think it's trash. I'm sorry.
You know what?
That's my hot take.
I love Star Wars a large majority of my life, and recently I've kind of switched camps.
Do you know why?
No, let's hear it. Why you don't?
Well,
Or
no,
why-
I'm saying
why
I convinced you.
Yeah, probably. No, I think I think it has kind of.
Is it because of the weird sister-brother romance thing? Because that's what does it for me.
No, I think like watching them all, you just kind of realize that they're kind of all bad movies.
So, yeah. And I would add on to that by even... So, this is what broke me. The most insistent Star Wars fans, like the most sycophantic fan base of Star Wars fans, they're like, I love Star Wars, they'll talk about it all the time, but then they're like, yeah, 3 of the movies were good, the rest of them were trash. I was like, how are you gonna like a third of a franchise but be like a diehard fan about it?
Have either of you guys tried the whipped Dalgona coffee?
I haven't yet. I'd really like to.
I haven't tried it either.
It looks interesting.
Yeah, I don't know how they like froth it. I don't know about the process. I've only seen the end result, but I'm intrigued.
James Hoffman did a video on it. The interesting part is that you have to use instant coffee.
Right.
Oh.
So that is a somewhat
Maybe I'll order some.
flavor.
It's gonna be a no
barrier.
for me,
Yeah.
dog. No, I'm just kidding. No, actually, in the world of instant coffee, there are specialty coffee roasters,
Yeah,
including Middle Stay.
Cat and Cloud.
There's a few off the top
Yeah.
of my head. They do instant coffee. So if you're really trying to be bad and bougie, get a specialty instant coffee, then do your thing. That's my advice.
Fruit Chocolate wants to know who one of your favorite chocolate companies in the U.S.
Oh, shoot. All right, I'm ready for this, actually. So we're going to brag on Crew a little bit. So there are chocolate people. They're stationed out of California. They're great. They've been with us since day one. Thanks for joining us. Honestly, though, even if it was like half jokingly, Crew's genuinely the best chocolate I've personally had. We use their chocolate for our hot chocolates and our mochas, and like, they're seriously fire. And honestly, there's a lot of parallels between like chocolate and coffee, in that like Crew would be a sort of chocolate adjacent to like specialty coffee in the sense that they're like an artisanal chocolate company. They have really responsible sourcing. They're honestly an all-around great company. But what I really like about them is like lots of cafes will have chocolate sauces, various like chocolate mimics and stuff like that, which is essentially like you get the flavor of chocolate, it gets the job done, sweet, sometimes it's like what people want. But like when you add Crew chocolate to like specialty coffee, you have all sorts of different like fruity flavors,
Yeah.
all sorts of complexity. So Crew chocolate's the real plug. They're super sick. We love them. They've been with us since day one. We love working with them. So that's my brag on Crew chocolate.
America wants to know what's in your mug.
These guys?
Mm-hmm.
Well, nothing anymore. But
they're empty.
we did have some whiskey, some tasting whiskey. We were just getting our, getting our social skills activated a little bit. This is our first time, so, you need something a little beyond just espresso. Whenever you mix espresso and whiskey, it's like,
It's great.
I call it the roller coaster because you're
it's
like,
kind of the loop
up.
to get the gears turning.
Oh yeah, and it's gotten us this far, so honestly, passes the test. Any other questions? Cool. Well, sick. All right. Okay.
You guys want to talk through our reason behind our mission statement a little more? Why customer service is crucial in these times, especially.
And make some plugs for the website.
Sick. All right. This just in. 2 brand new coffees. Now, so we were asked to elaborate a little bit on our vision or our mission. I haven't totally differentiated the two yet. Vision, mission. Either way, what we really want to do is love people and use coffee. We really saw, I guess, tying back into earlier conversations, we saw and talked to people who were like, I never go into X coffee shop because they're like rude to me. I never do this because they scoffed when I asked for cream. And that kind of struck a chord with us. And it's also, that's to say that we've had similar experiences. So even as coffee people, not everyone knows you are involved in coffee. So to a lot of places, you're just another customer. And I've gotten that treatment before. James, I'm sure you've gotten that treatment.
I could go on a rant, yeah.
Yeah, but so we saw that, and actually we were in a meeting early on when we were planning Little Bear, and we were writing down things that we were trying to do for Little Bear that separated us from everyone else. And for me, right off the bat, I was like, quality, right? And that's still really deeply ingrained, but where it ended up so we got some advice from our friend who's doing consulting for us, and he was essentially enlightened me and was for example, Southwest Airlines, they don't brag about not crashing planes, right? So all that to say is the quality is the bare minimum. So for us, it's we have seen, and it's totally cool. This isn't to rag on anybody, but you'll see a lot of paragraphs on the back of bags talking about how high quality, how good it is, this and that, which is again totally great. But we wanted to be okay, quality is self-evident. It's the thing that's just a baseline. So after that, we can put more time and energy and attention into the people we interact with. And that goes beyond just customers too. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when it comes to love people use coffee, it's not just our customers or, our guests in the cafe. That goes, back up the chain as well, back to the farmers, to our green coffee importers, anyone along the chain, any lives that we touch, we want to make better after interacting with Little Bear.
for sure.
Muggle505 wants to know,
Let's go.
what would be the ultimate way to brew coffee if cost was no object? Money was no object. You can brew any coffee anyway. What are you guys spending your millions of dollars
My
on?
stimulus check?
Yeah.
It hasn't come in yet. That's a good question. Brew method or the kind of coffee?
Coffee, brew method, everything.
Oh, the whole...
Yeah, hit us.
The Eugenoids.
Eugenoids?
However.
We're botching the name.
Yeah,
but,
we totally are. We're
shout them
butchering
out.
How would
us
2 Chainz brew it?
how lavishly.
Yeah. No, there's a super rare coffee that we were lucky enough to try a couple months ago. And we have no idea how to actually pronounce it.
Yeah, we think it's Eugenoids.
Yeah.
If anyone from Onyx or literally anyone who knows at all, just please tell us.
Yeah.
We don't know.
But it's about $100 a pound, and just life-changingly good. So it would have to be that coffee, and honestly, pour over. the Hario.
Keurig.
Keurig. Oh gosh.
Shout out to Keurig.
Yeah.
users,
No. If you could get really a Kalita or Hario V60, and some super great clean water, whether that be
Fresh spring water
yeah.
from the creek.
yeah,
That's what I say.
or the bottle. No, or if you get distilled water and you use third wave water, which is specifically for brewing coffee, that's a rabbit hole that I'm not going to go down. But
I have some melted ice from Greenland that I've been saving for like a really special occasion to brew with.
what about the Mars water you just got?
Dude.
What coffee would you do?
I would say, so, alright, in coffee, there's this term for a varietal called geisha. Once upon a time, it was really, it was synonymous with being like an incredible cup of coffee. And while that's usually still true, there's been so many like offshoots of it grown in a lot of different places now that it's not always at that same consistency. But if you gave me like an OG geisha coffee from where,
La Esmeralda.
yeah, exactly. It's from one specific lot is the idea. So one of those bad boys with, probably same pour over method. Honestly, maybe for a coffee like that, I might actually brew on a Chemex, just so I could get like max clarity. Well, I know we didn't do a Chemex tutorial, but we did just make a video, and it's pretty good. Josh plugged it earlier, but it's on our website.
Yeah, and also our shops on our website.
You know what else is on our website?
Yeah, a shop.
A shop.
A shop. We have tons of great merch. Not only shirts and that kind of stuff, but these coffees that honestly I'm really, really excited about.
Did you do this so you could create teams?
Teams, yes.
Because usually when there's opposition in the shot, it's like...
Yeah. No, I really am super excited about both these coffees.
You talk about that one. No, you talk about this one. I'll talk about this one. Go ahead.
They're both good.
Well, what can you expect from Kenya's? What does this have that's similar or different?
So typically, like I said earlier, Kenya's are typically more acidic. This guy is actually a really, really well-balanced cup that I'm just super excited about. There are some varieties in here. If you've never done research into different varieties in coffee, we try and put them on the back of the bag just for those people who do care. But this has a bunch of different varieties. All of them are very high grade, very typically exceptional coffees. And you can really, tell that in the cup.
For sure.
Yeah, so the Kenya is on the website. We're also doing that 20% discount with code Renegade.
Yeah. Promo code Renegade. So I also like it's still like super full bodied like a lot of Kenyas are, which I think is one good thing about Kenyas is that even if you brew like through a Chemex or something, it's still like it's clean, but it's still got like a really good mouth feel, which is what we call it. Which is like basically the texture on your tongue. Costa Rica, on the other hand, it's not the polar opposite, but it's pretty different. In a sense, in my Aeropress tutorial that I did earlier, it's really like a floral tea-like coffee. It's subtle and light-bodied. So like, if you're kind of over like the, fruity coffees or like you just want to break from the more acidic coffees, this coffee can still have a little more like stone fruit flavor notes, which is like a kind of big category for a lot of different fruits, but like peach is in there, nectarine's in there, fruits with big pits. So it has like those kind of subtle fruity notes, but for the most part, you're going to get like a really delicate, silky, smooth coffee out of this, which actually is, in my experience, pretty different from a lot of Costa Ricas that I've had. A lot of coffees from Costa Rica, for me, tend to be like pretty full on the body, and like a lot of the ones that I've had, not in a bad way, but they have like almost a peppery flavor note to them. I didn't find that with this one. which made it like pretty distinct in my mind. So that's why I'm pretty hyped. I mean, I am hyped about both of them. James and I both tried them the other day again, and like usually first roast we do a little, dialing in more, but these first batches, or this is the second batch, but they came out really good, and we tried them really soon after roast. Just to touch on that real quick, actually. So if you drink a coffee like right after it's roasted, it's not really
even the first couple of days.
Yeah. So first couple days, you still have a lot of gases stored up in the coffee, so you can brew it, and you won't get a full picture of like how exactly the coffee tastes. But you'll get like a pretty good
absolutely
idea. So, well, like we said, website, we're selling these bags, we're shipping out, we got our online store up and running. There's
the website?
tutorials. littlebearcoffeeco.com. littlebearcoffeeco, don't forget the co.com. And then you can also find it on links through our Instagram and social media.
Instagram, all over the place.
Yeah.
Facebook.
Well, thanks for joining us. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button. Thanks, guys. We appreciate it. We had fun.